It's wonderful to be here this evening, beloved brothers and sisters, to answer the question, is Britain a post-racial society? Is Britain the kind of society in which race is no longer a significant factor? Well, I think most of the speakers who went before me have done an excellent job to put things into context. But this is how I want to approach it with us this evening. I want to remind us of a dear brother and sister, Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence, who once held the view that Britain was a post-racial society. And then their son was murdered, viciously and brutally, but they still believe that Britain was a post-racial society until they start to engage with the state and state institutions. And the higher they went in that process of engagement, the more disappointed they became until they went public, exploding the illusion that they were living in a post-racial society. Stephen Lawrence himself, who was standing at the bus stop that night, was desensitized to the issue of racism. So much so that even when his friend, Dwayne Brooks, who, because he came from an activist background, and indeed was on a demonstration the year before, demonstrating against the racist murder of Roland Adams. Right. He knew when he saw those five young thugs across the road, even before they said, what nigger, he knew he was in trouble. And even when he said to Stephen, run Stephen, Stephen stood, did not understand that there was a reason to run. It is dangerous, brothers and sisters. It is dangerous to be totally unconscious of the reality of the times and the society in which we live, especially against something as vicious as racism. Are you all with me? And that was the problem with Stephen Lawrence, which caused his death, brothers and sisters. Then we had the Macpherson report. Now the Macpherson report, yes, focused primarily on the police force, but it also indicated that British society was institutionally racist, and also pointed at other institutions within society. And we must remember that there was an assessment that was done by a body called the United Nations Working Group of experts on people of African descent, who in 2013 did a scathing report on race relations in Britain. Well, what more do we need to hear, brothers and sisters? What more do we need to know? But why are we surprised that Britain is a racist society? Britain was built on something we now call the Ma'afa, using an African word. Right. And the Ma'afa is the invasion, conquest, enslavement, and colonization, neo-colonization of the African continent and African people worldwide. Britain's wealth, Britain's opulence, Britain's power has been built and continues to depend on the oppression, the exploitation, and the degradation of Africa and African people. We will not and do not understand this issue unless we realize and understand a matter of global geopolitics, a rule of global geopolitics, which is whoever controls Africa rules the world. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. So if you want to be number one in the world, you must control Africa. America is number one in the world. America controls Africa. When Britain ruled the world, Britain controlled Africa. And China has a vision of becoming the number one superpower in the world. China is moving now to take control of the African continent and all its strategic resources, including its human resources. To do that, to control Africa. To rule the world, you must control Africa. And to control Africa, you must control Africans. You've got to understand this, brothers and sisters. Are we missing the essence of the debate, the essence of the issue? And we must understand, brothers and sisters, that this has been going on for 500 years. Yes. And it's a continuum. It is built on the genocide. I have to speak in these terms. Is that all right this evening? To talk about genocide? We have to talk about the genocide of our ancestors, and that genocide is still going on today. It is not an accident that we are disproportionately killed by the British state in the form of the police. How often do you hear people of any other group being gunned down on the streets, like a Mark Duggan or a Azel Rodney, and the various number of brothers who have been gunned down or choked to death on the streets of Britain at the hands of its police officers? We have to look at these issues, brothers and sisters. Tendai Mware, I say, if it looks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, and it has duck feathers, and it lays duck eggs, there's a strong possibility that it's a duck. Right or wrong? It's a strong possibility that it is a duck. It's every institution for which we would do an analysis. And let me be clear about something here. Yes, for all that we would compliment, for all the celebrated track record of a Jeremy Corbyn, and we respect that track record. But we must not overlook the contradictions of the left as regards to race and racism. The left is not pure of racism. In fact, we might say the mecca of leftist politics is Cuba. Cuba is still struggling to come to terms with its racism. We need to look at that, brothers and sisters, because there are Africans in Cuba today who are demonstrating and saying we're still waiting for our revolution. So let's be clear about this. Let's be clear about this. And one more thing I want to say before Madam Speaker sits me down. I think it's erroneous to make wholesale comparisons between Britain's anti-immigrant mentality and the stories we hear coming out of Azania, South Africa, and other parts of our motherland. Because all of this nonsense that we hear happening on the African continent has its roots in apartheid and colonialism, and the pathology that it has left, the social pathologies that it has left on the African continent. If you don't believe me, do you ever hear of Africans in Azania, South Africa, objecting to white people coming into South Africa, campaigning against white people, attacking white people, white immigrants? No, they're not.
That's right.
So why aren't they attacking white immigrants? I'm not suggesting that they should. Understand me. I am saying, why is it only African immigrants that we're hearing stories? And by the way, there are many South Africans who are standing up against that kind of action. It's the racist British media, and the media is also racist. It's the racist British media who is misinforming us, brothers and sisters. I close with the words I said a few moments ago. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, has duck feathers, lay duck eggs, it must be a duck. Marcus Garvey says, unite, organize now or perish, rise you mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will. Thank you very much. Tendai Mware.